Welcome, everybody, to the newest installment of the Orange Wheel podcast. I'm Ted Paulus. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Orange Wheel. And this is the podcast where we support businesses in understanding Bitcoin and the monetary transition at large. I'm joined today by Myles Dhillon. Myles is a prominent personality in the space who hails from the UK. Myles and I actually attempted to do this interview a few weeks back, but unfortunately we were interrupted by some unfortunate events outside of my apartment. We'll go into those details another time, but I'm glad we could reschedule, Myles, and it's great to have you back. How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing really good. Doing really great, man. Thanks for having me back on. So I don't know which the best background to have is here, because school holidays, I'm like pushed into a room that I don't normally sit in. I hope that's okay with the printer.
Is that a printer in behind you?
Yeah, huge printer in my mum's house. We come to visit my mum and dad over the half-term holidays.
But that's great to have a printer on hand, right? Whenever I need to actually print something, I need to go to like a print shop nowadays. It's
actually very useful. I know that my mum and dad have an A3 printer, so if I ever know I need to print something big, I'm like, okay, I can send it to my mum, and hopefully my mum will be my printer. It's quite childlike behaviour. But.
I love it. Excuse me. So Myles, maybe, for the audience who might not be familiar with you, maybe it'd be great to hear a little bit about experiences and how you kind of got into Bitcoin. I know you have a very multifaceted background. From what I can tell, you're into faith, freedom, money, investing, entrepreneurship. It's really quite the broad spectrum of experiences you bring to the table. But maybe for the audience, it'd be great to get a quick overview of how you got into Bitcoin.
Yeah, sure. Well, I really got into Bitcoin because I had no idea that it was something that would go up in value. I really just thought that it was a way to transfer funds or currency across different jurisdictions. And I was living in India at the time. My wife had a job as a lawyer in Bangalore. And most of my income was still in the UK from a sort of previous music career that I was sort of still getting royalties from some songs that I had made a few years before that. And I met someone called Sonny Ray. He's also like he's a kind of OG Bitcoin guy. Like, he knew about Bitcoin in 2012 when he told me about it, and he understood it like we would discuss it now. So he's just so far ahead in his Bitcoin knowledge back then, when it was hard to understand Bitcoin unless you were really in the industry. And he told me about Bitcoin because we both were from different places. He was from Canada, and I was discussing, how do you get money into India? It's very closed. It's so difficult. And if you don't have a bank account in India, how do you get money into India and then out into cash? You mostly needed cash at that time to be able to spend money pretty much everywhere. Like, it was starting to be possible to use an international debit card, but I wanted to get money into India and then convert that into Indian rupees cash and then be able to spend it. It was really difficult. Western Union charges you so much money. I can't remember the numbers, but I was looking and thinking, this is a rip-off, an absolute rip-off, and I'm not prepared to pay that, even though that's what most people sending remittances back to India were doing. People who work in London send it back to their family. So I got into Bitcoin because Sonny described it to me as a way to buy Bitcoin in London, transfer it to yourself, basically, on your phone, and then transfer it or exchange it with someone in person in India, like for cash. So I would meet someone in India, transfer Bitcoin from one local Bitcoin account to another local Bitcoin account from this website called Local Bitcoins, and then they would give me cash. And I was like, this is actually by far the cheapest and most efficient way to make this happen. So that's how I got into Bitcoin. And he was describing how when they bought flights in Colombia, like coming back, they would do it in Bitcoin. He would send it to a Bitcoin debit card, and I just said, this is so much better. And I was also aware that I was circumnavigating the restrictions that the Indian government were placing on international remittances coming into the country. It's not possible for me to have got an Indian bank account unless you're an Indian citizen or you have a sort of non-resident visa. It was just so difficult. And I was also aware that the NGO that my wife was working for them to get funds into India was extremely restricted as well, because any organisation that was doing something which made the Indian government look like they were doing a bad job, i.e. there was trafficking taking place, like people trafficking taking place in India, money coming in to support that would obviously make the Indian government look like they were encouraging, they had a problem with people trafficking, so they would block those remittances. And I was like, why don't you guys just use Bitcoin? It's just so straightforward. So that was how I got into Bitcoin. I had no idea that we were going to become billionaires from Bitcoin going up, becoming the new global elite. It just was not on my radar. And when I bought Bitcoin, it was probably about $80. at Bitcoin. I didn't buy enough, obviously. No one did at that stage. And when it hit $100, I was in touch with Sonny saying, bro, like, this has gone up. Like, the money I've brought from London has gone up in value. This is crazy. And he was just saying, don't, just use it, but rebuy your Bitcoin. And I was saying, no. So I was just buying Bitcoin in pounds and just transferring it to rupees. I never really had much Bitcoin left over from those days, but
it was more like a checking account for you, kind of, right? It was just like you moved
money got paid in London,
UK into
brought it
India,
over.
spend it, and then
Yeah, but it was. I had no idea what I had at that stage. I didn't understand it, and it took me quite a few years before I really started understanding Bitcoin properly.
Okay, but fascinating story. I mean, it's really, I think that's quite a unique foray into it, right? Not really from the investment angle at all, but actually from the payments and and remittances and cross-border sides. Very cool. I mean, I think given that story, it's still very surprising when people say they don't understand the payments side of Bitcoin at all. I mean, once you experience it, you're like, this is just the easiest thing ever, right? I mean, to go back to having to do wire transfers and stuff is just a huge pain in the ass. It's
Yeah. And after we left India, we supported some like charities and NGOs and even some individuals that were doing like amazing work, we thought, on a very, very small scale. We were sort of sending £100 every month to one family that were running a small school for children who were tested HIV positive from parents who had passed on. So, and we were just supporting directly a family with £100 a month, and that was making a massive difference to their income. And I couldn't persuade him to use Bitcoin, so I was sending it by Western Union. It was costing me about £120 to send £100, and I just thought I could send you 20% more. And it just wasn't an efficient system. And I thought, this is so ridiculous. Bitcoin fixes that for sure. And even now, particularly with Lightning payments, it's just so much cheaper as well, even cheaper than it would have been when I was doing it.
Yeah, I remember when I was kind of getting to Bitcoin, I went pretty deep in 2013 when I bought my first Bitcoin. I did get sidelined because the Mt. Gox hack affected me, and it took me a few more years, 2017, 18, when I really started getting back into it. But I do remember at that time actually buying short positions on Western Union because I was like, oh, they're going to be disrupted by this technology. As soon as people find out about it, I mean, all these remittance companies, nobody's going to pay 20, 25%. But I was obviously wrong. Although I did just look at the Western Union stock price now, and I see it is down from 2020. It was around $25 per stock, and now it's down at like less than 10. So it's finally catching up. I don't think it's Bitcoin that's displacing it, but but these business models have to be disrupted. Yeah, exactly.
Absolutely.
Okay, cool. But so that's kind of one great angle. I mean, it'd be great to get an experience or get to hear from you, Myles, like also some of the entrepreneurial things you've done in your life. It's been quite varied, I think. But I mean, besides Bitcoin, how is it that you've typically kind of generated income for yourself? What have been your primary means by which to do that?
Yeah, so when we came back from India, I had been a musician. And when you stop being a musician, you kind of shut the door to all those job opportunities because someone younger who's up for traveling more, who's up for working for less money, comes in and takes your place, right? So by the time I came back from India, I'd run a business there. I actually had a food packaging company in India for a while that was going quite well, but then we had to leave in a bit of a rush. It was a bit of a dangerous situation with my wife's work there. And so we had to get back. I was stumped, didn't know what to do. And I had in my childhood some experience in renovating properties and working for builders. So I just borrowed a load of money from all my friends who had all saved 10, 15, 20, 50,000 pounds. And we were all discussing with each other, what are you going to do with your savings? And they were saying, I think I should go into the stock market because that's what my dad does. And you're like, do you really understand that? And they're like, no, I don't know what to do. I've just started working, a few years into work. And I said to them all, why don't you guys give it to me? I'll buy a flat. I'll renovate it and sell it and we'll split the profit. I'll take half. You guys take the other half. So that's what I did. And I just got into that whole property game for a little while. And that was my whole shtick for quite a long time. And I was still doing some music stuff. I actually picked up a few other music things. But I realized while I was doing these property renovations, the guys who were sending me the biggest invoices were the gas engineers and the guys who managed the gas installation and the central heating and the hot water. And I was like, these guys are killing it. Their daily rates are so high. It's astronomical. So I just realized if I'm going to carry on with this property thing, if I can qualify as a gas person, I can do some of that technical work myself, and then I can just outsource all of the other slightly less expensive stuff. But I also realized very quickly after I did a bit of it that I could hire people and then send them out to do that gas work as well. So that's what I started doing. And I started actually really enjoying being on the tools myself and like being in the building site. And I loved like the vibe and working with other dudes. It was just a really great environment. And I just started really enjoying it. So I pretty much accidentally became a tradesman and moved into that whole world. But I was always pretty focused on renovating property and having the sort of plumbing and gas engineering business running simultaneously. And this just became a great sort of income generator. And then the property stuff was where I plowed money into when I made profit in the beginning, until I started understanding Bitcoin. And that's when I started switching and diversifying away from property investing into Bitcoin. And that just changed everything for me.
Really cool. Yeah, it's great to hear that kind of like integration, right? That kind of vertical integration in a way, right? You kind of are in the property renovation and flipping business, I suppose, right? I mean, were these properties mainly for resale, or were you also renting them out as income properties, or a combination?
Yeah, so it was kind of a combination. It started out just to create income, flipping it, and then basically by the time you've sold it, you're so in the red that you need the profit to kind of pay for your living expenses for the last 6 months, and then hopefully for the next 6 months. So it would be pretty intense. I was pretty young then as well, so our outgoings weren't that high. But as time went on, I was able to start using some of that profit and then, leveraging the crap out of the business, out of the property, and being able to use the profit as the equity. So then we did end up hanging on to quite a few properties, and that was what I thought was what clever people did. I thought clever people buy property, keep it, and just rent it out. But
and
I didn't
it's
realize
still very much like conventional wisdom.
Yeah,
people still
totally
have that perspective, right?
I mean, it's definitely like it's definitely a good business, but it's definitely a business. I think I thought, oh, you get it, you rent it out, and then you just chill, you don't do anything. But I realized that suddenly I had these extra customers that I had to service from my plumbing business. And it wasn't just plumbing I was dealing with. It was like plumbing, electric, leaks, heating, mold, like all the things that happen in property after a few years. I suddenly had this side business, and I only had a few properties, of property maintenance and management and tenant management. Oh my gosh, it's cool. If that's your business, that's great. But it is a business, and it's definitely not. You see these Instagram reels pop up for me. It's like how to generate passive income from property with no money down. I've never clicked through to those because I know that's such BS. It's not possible to do that. It's not passive at all. It's completely the opposite of passive. If you're going to be a good landlord, some sense of responsibility towards people's places where they live, you can't be passive. It's completely active. Unless you want to outsource it to someone else, in which case that cuts a whole load of the profit out of it.
Yeah, no, I think that I'm just nodding because certainly, I haven't managed, I've only had one property in my life that I've owned, but when I moved to Europe, I started renting it out. I'm like, okay, this is great. I'll have somebody else pay my mortgage for me and stuff. And the first year and a half or so was like pretty easy going. You just collect the rent, but then problems start occurring, right?
Yes.
And especially if you're
Stuff goes wrong.
if you're not living close by and stuff, it can become a huge, just the mental burden and anguish I had to go through for this last couple of years of that property. One of the most liberating things was like selling that place and being like, all right,
yes,
liquidate.
Yes. Yeah.
But yeah, I think you're right. I think a lot of people. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm still definitely in the process of I think today, Friday, it's a great start of the day for me because an estate agent is going to one of our last properties that we own personally to value it. So I've just let the tenants upstairs and downstairs know that we're selling it, which is quite a big, I had to approach that in a legal way, which is going to make sure they get out, but also that I'm not violating any of their rights and turfing them out as well, but I really want them to leave because I want to sell it. But I also don't want them to leave too soon because if I don't sell it, then I've got to pay the mortgage without their rent coming in. So I've had to do this tricky balance, and now it's all good. The agent's going there today, and the process of selling that property is going to get underway. I enjoy the income from that. It's great, but it's been quite a long journey of deciding, am I going to keep this property and keep looking after it and get the income from it? And does the income from that property stop me from selling Bitcoin because I don't need money right now because I've got some income from that place particularly? Or do I actually want to just get rid of it and be free of the mental anguish that you're describing and just plow a load of it into Bitcoin? Even if I take some of the equity and spend that for the next couple of years, I've just decided that I'm done with it. I don't want to be in trouble for the gas or the boiler maintenance and all the things that I know that have to be looked after. I'm just kind of done with it, really. And I think there are better investments now.
Certainly. Certainly. And I think for each person, I mean, that calculus is going to be different depending on how much they value their time and how much risk that they're willing to take and so forth. But for me personally, I mean, I do think, if and when a Bitcoin kind of satisfies its role as like really becoming a store of value, which I think it inherently has the properties to do so, it just needs everybody else in the world to kind of like, or enough people in the world to recognize that and also start using it as a store of value to bring the volatility down. But anyhow, point from my view is like, I see it as a moral thing to be able to have something that people can just store their value in without having to take undue risk or time out of their lives to manage through property management or managing a stock portfolio or whatever, right? So, I mean, I think there's something really profound about that kind of liberation that kind of comes with such a technology.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I think probably through my sort of late 20s, early 30s, I was putting money into the stock market as well because I thought that's a sensible thing. That's what people do. And I'd had some success. And when you look at I used to use this app called Hargreaves Lansdowne. I had some success in stuff I was putting money into. And the more I had some success, the more I spent time reading about it and reading sort of stock market trading, day trading books and investing, got really into Warren Buffett, got really into like We Study Billionaires, Preston Pysh kind of philosophy. And the more I understood, the more I learned, the less confident I started becoming about beating the market. And I started realizing, I think I am clever, but actually I've just been lucky because statistically it's not going to be possible for me to outperform the market for a very long time. So I should just quit while I'm ahead. And that was also part of my like drive into understanding Bitcoin more and getting more into Bitcoin and then understanding the stock market through Bitcoin, understanding economics through Bitcoin, and just realizing I'm working my ass off doing property, running a gas engineering business, managing proper geezers on a building site, all of the drama that comes with that and people being hungover and the sort of it's not like a workplace office professional situation. It's very casual in the way that you manage lads, guys, blokes on a building site. And if someone's birthday, no one's coming into work the next morning until lunchtime. It's just, that wouldn't be acceptable in an office. But I was managing all of those different things and then also trying to be a part-time stockbroker on the weekend and beat these guys on Wall Street who were working full-time. And the liberation of Bitcoin is so freeing to feel like, wow, I can just earn money, do my skills, add value to the world, and just sweep it into this asset that I know will be worth more in 10 years' time than it is now.
Love it. No, I feel very much the same. And something I'll complement with that, it's only become a little bit more prominent in my own life in the last year or so, I'd say, maybe 2 years, is like the idea of like, what are you actually investing in when you're investing in the stock market or in bonds and stuff. And what I've actually realized over time, the additional benefit to Bitcoin from my view is like, I don't have to feel like I'm supporting any given government and the actions they're taking internationally or a company that's doing. I think what we're realizing with time is like all these big mega scalers and stuff, like, are they actually having a positive impact on the world? Debatable, right? And do we want to be supporting that just simply because you have to kind of preserve your wealth by getting into the market to beat inflation? And again, being able to kind of opt out of that and say, I also kind of put my vote with my wallet, so to speak, and say, actually, I think Bitcoin's better for humanity than necessarily supporting all the mega scalers that are letting AI maybe without ethics and ethical standards and all this. I mean, you have kind of a bit of a spiritual and faith-based kind of perspective a little bit. Maybe any words you've seen that kind of intersection between Bitcoin and your belief system? Yeah,
admit I love talking about this. I think that as time goes on, more and more, I think I probably really started understanding Bitcoin in a similar time to you, 2016, 2017, 2018. I was just really, all I consumed was books and content around Bitcoin and trying to understand it. But from the last couple of years, my main learning has been that if you have a Christian faith and even if you've really grown up in a Christian democracy or a Western country, a lot of the laws and a lot of our belief systems are based around biblical tenets from a very long time ago, would have influenced the legal system. And, a lot of the legal system can be put down to looking at the Ten Commandments and them just expanding on those for a very long time. So whether you have any faith or not, you have to sort of look at that and think. A lot of morality is, first of all, based on natural law. Everybody understands that you shouldn't really steal from other people. You shouldn't kill other people. It's kind of not helpful if you have an affair with someone else's wife. That's like really not helpful thing for society, for you or for anyone else. Like, no judgment if you've done that, but people would probably generally agree that's kind of destructive for families and people's self-esteem and how they feel. So it's sort of an expansion of these basic things that we understand as moral law. And then when you start looking at Bitcoin and the way that it intersects with that, you start realizing, thou shalt not steal. Like, don't steal from other people, because if you do, it has an impact on what that person is going to be able to spend the rest of their money on. So if I come and steal your microphone and your laptop, you're going to have to then allocate funds yourself to replace that laptop, and that's going to impact your ability to be able to spend money on food or housing. But why is it any different when I started understanding how inflation works in the fiat money system? It's if someone from the government came into your house and took 3% of everything inside your house today and left, you would be like, I've got you on camera, you've stolen my stuff inside my house, and you calculated that. And they said, oh, actually, no, we only take 2% of your stuff every year. That's what we planned, and you've all agreed to it, and none of you seem to have a problem. You'd be like, oh, you wouldn't say, oh yeah, okay, cool, yeah, we agreed to that. That's what we've been doing for a really long time. That would be outraged, if a politician came in and did that. But that's what we're doing. And when something is stolen from you, it has an impact on your ability to be able to spend money on food and housing and shelter, in the same way that I'm saying if I stole your laptop. But just because they do it through a covert way of increasing the money supply, or the banks lending money out on a fractional reserve banking system, that made me realise, okay, if you are a professing Christian and you believe that you want to follow that and you want to have a morality around the way you live your life, isn't there a problem then with the way that our money system works and what you're saying you want to do with your faith? And for me, that started becoming a real kind of tension in my life when I started realizing I'm actually supporting this system. I've used leverage to purchase properties, actively tried to do that. And as a result of that, the property that I'm, started selling today, hopefully selling today, that has increased in value, not because I'm clever at all, not because I've done anything to it. I haven't renovated that place for like 15 years or something. It's the same as it was 15 years ago. Why should I, because I have access to cheap credit, be able to then get this benefit of the increase in the property price? That's definitely affected other people who are younger than me or of similar ages' ability to be able to buy a property in that area. I don't even live in that area anymore. And I started realizing there's a tension here, and it's encouraging theft. And if you're anti-theft, you should also be anti the fiat money system. And as a Christian, that started becoming a stressful problem for me. And so, we started talking about it a bit more and gathering people to try and understand it. But it's absolutely not straightforward. If you think telling people about Bitcoin is one step, try telling a Christian that Bitcoin is what they should be using if they really believe in moral money.
Yeah, and I'm optimistic that I think, deep enough in the future, this will all become, like, in retrospect for humanity, the future just so obvious for them. I think the humans of 50, 100 years from now will just look back, I can't believe those savages lived back then. Where they had a system that was so oppressive for people, right? But right now, when people are living in it like their whole life, like water, it's just so hard. And I think, I think a fundamental issue I take also is like what people are taught in schools, in mainstream economic theory, is that inflation's good. It's what we need. It provides a benefit to society. If we don't have it, we're going to have deflation, and it's going to be terrible, and economic collapse and so forth. So it's actually this kind of like really, it's such a almost opposite sort of thing, right? Not only is it's not perceived as theft, which I agree with you, it is. It's actually perceived as something that's providing a net benefit to society. And to take it one step further, what you said about theft, it's like, if money is a representation of our time that we've invested in work, and now we're saving it through this money as a savings vehicle, then when the government takes a percentage of that, they're actually taking a piece of your life in a sense, right? They're taking a portion of the life that you've invested. So I think that's also a perspective I sort of have on that. And then, as you said, it's like ultimately what it is a transfer of wealth from savers to borrowers. And so if you get on the right side of that kind of like wealth transfer, then of course you can be part of the population that actually in a way benefits, but then can you feel morally okay about that? And I think you're one of the few people I've talked to that actually recognizes that you can be a benefactor and have a moral quandary with that.
Yeah, and I kind of want to check out of it. I've never used leverage on my Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin. And I saw someone saying recently that it's probably even if you're not into that and you think that's risky, it's probably not a bad time right now to borrow money against your Bitcoin to buy more Bitcoin. Because, even if we're not quite at the bottom right now with the price, we're probably pretty close. I mean, it's a lot better to do it now than when it was 120k. And I just have something, I have this historical education narrative that debt is good, that you should use debt to increase your wealth. And I don't know, I just feel like maybe, I don't know whether this is a Bitcoiner or as a Christian, debt just feels like slavery, really, because when you have a big debt and so say I was the mortgage on this flat in London, my first choices don't become, okay, if I'm offered work and I need to get paid, my first choice is not, do I want to do this work? Am I going to enjoy it? Is it going to add value to the world? My first thought is, I must take this because I have to service that debt. And that then creates like another level of weirdness and slavery that makes me feel that I'm not actually doing the things that I've been created for like freedom and to do fun stuff and to have a great time and also to do good and to have an impact on the world and to love my neighbours and the people who are around me. I'm now thinking, first and foremost, I must service this debt. That is my primary role as a dad, as a husband, to look after my kids and my family. It's not what's the best thing for my family, it's what's the best thing to make sure I keep my paymasters happy. And that's the other thing about debt that makes me feel like I'm not sure we've really learned the right stuff about it. And as a result, I'm kind of hesitant and resistant to borrow against my Bitcoin. And I don't know what I'm going to do when it gets to that place where it seems like the right economic choice to borrow against it rather than sell it and have a tax burden. I just haven't quite reconciled. I'm still in this quandary where I don't know whether debt is good, even if we're talking about debt on your Bitcoin. I just feel like I might end up running away from that whole thing completely.
No, I'm sort of person at the same space, maybe for a different angle, different reason. But since being burned at Mt. Gox, I'm kind of like, I don't want to trust any third parties. I want to have full self-sovereignty over it. But I think there is this always, once you are in any sort of debt, that's always going to be in the back of your mind that this is something that is going to influence, I think, how you live in many ways. And it's been, speaking of this, two kind of things to add on, right? One thing is like when you make your own decision to take on debt, you have nobody else to blame but yourself. But I think there's two things in the world today that are like making it not really people's own informed decisions. Like one is, I think, mortgages in some countries like the US, like student loans. It's just like, that's just what you do. You take out a mortgage, you get as big a mortgage as you can on as big a house as possible, and you get a student loans because education, everybody needs a secondary degree education. And so people are kind of already, as soon as they are making some earning capacity, even before that, already ladening debt on themselves. Not because I think people have really thought it through, but because like societal pressures put them that way. And then on top of that, I mean, with government debts, we're effectively like burdening our children with debts before they're even born, right? They're already taking on debt that they've had absolutely no say in. So I think there's a lot of, I tend to agree with you. I think especially when we're at today with these unsustainable debt levels from governments, I don't think people really see how is this getting financed at the end of the day and where is it really coming from? And in a way, it's coming from our children, our grandchildren. Yeah, it becomes so abstract that I don't think people really relate to the actual impact it has.
Yeah, I really feel that I generally had an aversion to debt anyway, like credit cards and short-term debt. Like I never really got into any of that, but I always thought that mortgage debt was good, or like teaching debt was good, or student loan debts was actually a good debt to get on. It was so weird because they would talk about good debt and bad debt. Mortgage is a good debt. Is it really a good debt? Because it's like a really long amount of time, and when you do those mortgage calculators, you realise how much more money you're paying back to the bank than the actual amount of money you borrow. And you just feel like, this doesn't feel good. This actually feels bad. There's nothing good about it. And I think what really is debt when you're doing stuff, even if you're using Klarna to buy clothes on a clothing website because you're going out for some party or something and you want to get some cool clothes. All it really is you're grasping for something that you don't have. It's kind of greed or coveting or a desire for something which you can't have right now, but you want it now. It's what in Bitcoin we call a high time preference, and really the whole world is driving us towards high time preference choices, and the government is doing high time preference choices. But actual happiness, and then again back to the faith thing, there's so many verses in the Bible talking about the whole gratitude movement, which is a thing that everybody practices now. I feel like it was plagiarized from the Bible thousands of years ago. The Bible was just filled with stuff about be content in your current situation, be happy whether you're in riches or in rags. You know, if your belly is full, if your belly's empty, be content and be grateful. There's so much stuff in the Bible about that. And actually, when we're doing the high time preference choices, borrowing money to get stuff that we can't afford right now, you're just showing that you're basically not happy and content with your current state. And you're going to do a high time preference choice in order to bring the future into now. But you're not thinking about how you're going to deal with that, bringing your future into now. And I just don't know whether there's ever going to be a situation where debt is good, unless you're doing the house mortgage thing, leveraging to be able to get more money. But then we're back to the same thing where you'll be doing fine, but you're going to be impoverishing someone else.
Yeah, you're pushing the rates of houses up so high, or the values of houses up so high, that you're pushing other people out of the market, right? And
yeah.
And I think that's where we're realizing that's not a society we want to live in, right? Where the next generation can't. And it's happening all over the developed world, right? Where Gen Z folks can't get on the property ladder. And, I don't know how this can be resolved, right? Because we're at a point now where all the people who have homes are all leveraged on their homes. So, if they do let the property prices come down, we have another financial collapse like we did in 2008. Yeah. But if they don't, then you price younger people out of the market. So I do wonder how this tension is going to be resolved. The governments are all in a very tight spot right now in that regard.
Yeah. I don't know if you want to carry on down this track with property, or if you want to put it somewhere else, but I could.
Yeah, but I mean, maybe let's switch it over to a little bit on businesses, right? So I mean, for our audience, we're trying to kind of get out to people who might be part of a larger enterprise, or maybe they have their own small business on the side, and maybe they're curious about Bitcoin. Given right now that Bitcoin's price is down, it's 50% lower than where it peaked in October. Of course, we're getting a lot of negative sentiment coming out of the woodwork right now, as it always happens during the down cycles. Like all these Bitcoin haters come out of the woodwork, say, "We told you so. It's going to die."
Yeah.
How would you talk to folks who maybe are Bitcoin curious, thinking about it for their business, maybe for their own individual savings as well, but given that there's all this negative sentiment out in the world right now, what are some words of advice or some perspectives you'd share?
Well, my journey into it, I mean, I didn't really... I feel like I was doing the Michael Saylor treasury play before Michael Saylor was even doing anything. Like, not even that I'm trying to say I did it, but all I really did was I delved more each time I felt my conviction rose. And the way I did that was, as my company profits went up and I had, the buffer in the bank account gets bigger and bigger, I would then look and think, what am I going to do with this money? I could pay myself in more dividends. The accountant was saying, you probably want to wait till you get to this level before you do that. So then I would listen to some Bitcoin content and just get super convicted and think, this is the way forward. And I would then sweep that money straight into Coinbase and just buy as much Bitcoin as I could. The reason why I did that as well is because I also knew, I did some testing, back and forward. If I got into trouble and we had a situation with work and cash flow, I could actually sell that Bitcoin and bring it back into pounds pretty easily. So I think probably for people who are running businesses, I've done it. I've moved money in and out of Bitcoin once or twice, but mostly into Bitcoin. And the reason for that was, the more you understand about it, the more comfortable you start becoming in buying Bitcoin. And when the price is down, the proposition is even better as something to keep your money in. And I understand that you need to keep a buffer in the bank for cash flow, and the larger the business gets, the bigger that buffer needs to be. But still, relatively, I would be keeping around 6 months' expenses in the bank when I was running the business, especially when I had employees. But I then reduced that to 3 months because I realised it's going to be quite bad. If we get down to 3 months, I can then sell some of the Bitcoin. So I would just encourage people, you don't have to start sweeping all your cash into Bitcoin if you're running a business, but wouldn't it be sensible to put it into an asset that actually has the potential to appreciate in value rather than cash, which is, as Michael Saylor says, it's this melting ice cube. And now is the best time to be thinking about that. When the price is down, the risk is actually much lower compared to... And I definitely wasn't saying this to people when we were in the 110s. I was sort of got loads of messages from friends and people, and you probably know the same in podcasts, people get in touch with you, that people say, what shall I do? I've got this much money, I'm going to put it into Bitcoin. I've got a business, I'm going to put this money into Bitcoin instead of paying myself a dividend. I was saying, well, just hold right now, because I just don't know whether we're going to go up to 200,000 or we're going to come down to 60,000. Just difficult to know which way we're going to go. So I was saying to people then, just dollar cost average into Bitcoin. That was my main thing back then. But now I would probably be saying to people, still dollar cost average, but you can probably feel a bit more relaxed about the way you're putting your money into it. I mean, maybe I'll get burned with my words, but it's better than telling people to do that at 120 when we're down at like 60 something.
Yeah, I tend to be the same in the sense that I feel like I can't really predict where the market's going to go. So dollar cost averaging is really, I think, the best way to go about spreading out that risk. But yeah, I think it's great perspective. I feel the same way. Once you've been in Bitcoin long enough, you actually get to the opposite. When price comes down, you're like, now's the opportunity to actually get really excited and actually see how much more you can acquire when it's on scale. But for those that are uninitiated, they're like, I just feel like there's so many people who are like, now that it's down, it's been proven that it's not a good store of value, and therefore now I'm not going to touch it.
Man, it's like so dumb. It's such a dumb narrative. I actually feel sorry for the journalists who write those articles now. There was one recently, it was the Financial Times, they were saying, you know, it's been all over feeds, $69,000 too high is the thing. Like, all you have to do is, they must have a database at FT saying, like, what all the other articles you've written about Bitcoin. They must be able to, like, type Bitcoin and all the ones, the number of times that they've proclaimed it dead. I just feel that if you're a journalist writing that now, brave. You're putting yourself out there, and the longer time goes on, the more stupid you're going to look when Bitcoin doesn't die. Maybe maybe they're thinking, if I proclaim Bitcoin's dead and it does die, I'm going to look like a legend. I'll be the person that got the timing right. Yeah, but it's just high risk game. But maybe with journalists, they don't actually care.
There's no accountability. I mean, like, Financial Times is still paying her a salary. If anything, she's probably getting paid more now than she was 4 years ago or 8 years ago when she first started writing. So you think you're right. There's no incentive for her to really at all change her perspective, but except for the only person who's hurting herself by not actually embracing it. But I agree. I think there should be more accountability for both journalists and economists who actually like can be wrong, and not just for themselves, but because they have a platform and they're actually like influencing so many people in the world.
Yeah,
they're actually harming those people, I feel, right? So there should be some sort of negative repercussions, at least from their employers.
I think I saw this, someone did a calculation. If you bought $100 of Bitcoin every time the Financial Times said Bitcoin's dead, something like that, you only would have put in like $2,400 or something like that, and you would now be sitting on $450,000 of Bitcoin wealth or something now. So actually, it's an indicator that we've got to a place in the market. And if you look at the dots of when articles come out, hit pieces against Bitcoin, it's only ever really in the down cycles. When Bitcoin's on the way up, there's a gap in dots saying negative things, because it's not popular to say that. The popular things to say then are, will Bitcoin hit $1 million? And the Financial Times will write an article about that, because that's what people will click on. It's just clickbait. It's pure clickbait, and it's just sophisticated clickbait when it comes from a magazine like the Financial Times.
So something you kind of said that I kind of, the way I synthesized it earlier is that in order to kind of like have that conviction, to be able to actually make the moves when the market's slow, to buy more, or at least to DCA or to begin DCAing, you kind of have to have a understanding of the fundamental thesis of why it is that Bitcoin's price is going to continue to appreciate, why its adoption will continue to expand.
Yeah.
So for those who might not be yet initiated, again, they're kind of Bitcoin curious, what are some sources of information that you think they might be able to go to kind of help to build that understanding and that conviction?
Yeah, I mean, one of the first things I tell people, particularly if they're in business, you would have seen it. It's the Joe Bryan video, "What's the Problem?" I don't know if you can find that. If you Google it, Joe Bryan, "What's the Problem?" It's a fantastic lead into Bitcoin, and he's not really talking about Bitcoin. He's actually just addressing the problems that we can all see in society and in our developed economies. That for me is one of the main sort of ways that I bring people into Bitcoin now. If they're asking me about it, I'm obviously like shilling my own podcast to them, but I'm saying that really, before you want to learn about Bitcoin, before you want to learn about Bitcoin, you need to have the conviction of knowing that everything's going in a bit of a sketchy direction. So you want to have that basic understanding, and then you can then progress to learning about the technical aspects of Bitcoin, or why we think that it's valuable, why the scarce number of Bitcoins that will ever be in circulation, why we think that's valuable. But that video, "What's the Problem?" does talk about that, talk about printing of the money, and that then gives you an understanding to then follow on and learn more about Bitcoin and the sort of central tenets of it.
Yeah, Joe Bryan's great, and I've seen him live a few times actually as well, and
cool.
had a chance to kind of catch him with a beer at Bedford last year.
Oh, did you? Cool.
But I think it's really good. And
can you hear that?
Yeah.
They literally just come outside our house and started cutting a hole in the road.
Okay, it's gone now.
No, I think it's going to come back.
But I think that's really good in the sense that a lot of my friends, for example, will say, okay, what problem does Bitcoin actually solve? And so I think you're exactly right in the sense that people need to understand, okay, there's actually problems, and then understand the solution that Bitcoin presents to those problems.
Shall I move into a different room?
I think we'll wrap up in a minute or two anyhow. It's not tremendously bad, and in the post edit, we'll be able to
you might
clean up
do
the audio
thing,
So as we wrap up here, Myles, it'd be great to hear kind of what's your plans for 2026. What do you have on your agenda?
Yeah.
What are you excited about?
Actually, I'm just about to leave on a trip with my wife and my kids. I sold my plumbing business that I've been talking about in December 2024, which is January 2025, so actually just last year. And we've been traveling in Southeast Asia most of last year. We've been back in London for a couple of months, and we're just about to go and hit South America for quite a few months between March, April, May, June, July, August. Yeah, so we're going to be traveling South America for most of the rest of this year. And I mean, the price of Bitcoin being down isn't that helpful, because it sort of makes you feel a bit poorer when you go around and you're looking at renting Airbnbs. But I think people have said to me, oh, wow, look, you're traveling, you must have sold your Bitcoin, like, lucky you for buying Bitcoin early. And I'm like, no, man, it's not lucky me. I swept money into Bitcoin when I could have been sweeping that money into cars or more lavish holidays for the last 6 or 7 or 8 years. I wasn't. I was like dollar cost averaging into Bitcoin whenever my conviction went up. So it's not that I've sold my Bitcoin. It's just that I know I've got not a big buffer, but I've got something there which I believe is going to be more valuable in the future. So it gives me the ability to make a choice around, I could go and travel and do this stuff, not because I'm spending that money now, mostly because I feel like my future is much more secure than I thought it was when I just owned rental properties. So that's kind of my 2026 stuff. I haven't got any huge goals for the year because we're doing so much travel and homeschooling. But I think we're going to be back in the UK from September, and that's when we're really going to knuckle down, decide where we're going to put down roots. So I guess my goal for 2026 is where are we going to settle? And is that going to be in the UK or is it going to be somewhere else?
Very exciting. That sounds super cool. Both the travel plans and then the big decisions on the other side of that.
Yeah.
Which countries do you plan on visiting in South America?
We're going to be in Argentina. We're going to go like down really far, Patagonia sort of way. And then what's the country in between Argentina and Brazil? My brother-in-law.
Bolivia or Paraguay?
Paraguay.
Bolivia.
Then we're going to be in Paraguay for a bit. And then, my brother-in-law lives in Rio, so then we're going to finish there and fly out from Rio back to London.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds very, very exciting. That's awesome.
Yeah, super cool.
But then, Myles, that's crazy. Thanks so much for your time today. I'm glad we got the opportunity to kind of finish what we started a few weeks ago. And wish you fantastic travels in South America. Hope to kind of maybe meet in person at the back end of this year in the UK potentially.
Yeah, cool. Thanks, Ted. Very nice talking to you.